Hi folks, HR Funk here. A while back I made a video where I was doing some shooting drills, and I mentioned during that video that I was not drawing from a holster because I didn't want to introduce that as a variable that might skew the results of the drill. And after I made that comment, some of you asked me if I would put together a video where I would look at the different types of holsters available and the different types of carry methods for concealed handgun carriers and see if maybe we could find anything out as to whether or not one or the other was superior in any way. So I got around to doing that today, and I'm going to look at three different carry methods in this video. They are going to be a shoulder holster, a strong side outside the waistband holster, a cross draw holster, and an appendix inside the waistband holster. And what I did was go out to the range and I took my Springfield Armory Hellcat, which I have behind me on the bench here, and I used this for all the drills, so we would have one firearm, so it's not going to introduce a variable into this where I've got one type of firearm for one holster and a different type for a different holster and so forth and so on. So every drill is going to involve my Springfield Armory Hellcat. Now my cover garment is going to change a little bit. When I was at the range with the shoulder holster, the cross draw holster, and the strong side outside the waistband holster, I was wearing a coat, which I will put on here in a few moments. For the appendix inside the waistband, I was wearing this sweater, and I had the pistol right here, so I just raised the sweater and then I was able to draw and fire the drill. When I fired these drills, I was firing at my half-size IPSC steel silhouette target, which I think is a fair representation of more or less the upper torso area of a human being. Since it is a half-size silhouette, it requires a little bit more precise shot when you're shooting, and I was firing at it at a distance of 15 feet, which again I think is a relatively realistic engagement distance for a defensive encounter. So when I got to the range, I put on each of the different types of holsters one after the other, and I fired 3 shots drawing from concealment from that holster. And I used my shot timer to time how long it was from the time the timer sounded until I fired my one shot at the target. Now I only counted the shot if it hit the target, and fortunately I went 12 for 12 with all 4 of my holsters and 3 shots fired with a draw from each of those holsters. So I felt pretty good about that. Now I'm not going to show my usual split screen view where you see me shooting and the shots hit the target. Most of the time you can hear them hit the steel target. But since I wasn't really looking at accuracy beyond just what I would call defensive accuracy, I didn't think that was going to be all that important. But again, I was shooting at that half-size IPSC silhouette, so I wasn't just spraying and praying. Also, as I was drawing from the various holsters in concealment, I was not going as fast as I absolutely positively could, because I didn't want to get in such a rush that I was running the risk of potentially shooting myself while I was firing the drills. So I'm firing as fast as I can safely draw from those various holsters and get my shot on target. Now, as I said, I was using my shot timer, so I looked at each one of those times for the 3 shots that I fired from each of the different concealment holsters, and then I'm going to put that together in a table, and we'll look at individually what the times were for the different holsters that I'm using, and then we'll compare them to each other to see which one is going to be the fastest draw. And since I did go 12 for 12 with all of my shooting, there's not really going to be the one that's more accurate. But I'm also going to talk about some other things along the way with regard to how I was presenting the holster from these different, or the pistol rather, from these different holsters, and talk about some things that you might want to be aware of if you decide to use one of those carry methods. So first up was my shoulder holster, and some of you know that I am a fan of shoulder holsters, and I'm going to start out without my cover garment so I can talk a little bit about the presentation from the shoulder holster. Now this is my older DeSantis nylon rig, and one of the nice things about this is it allows a lot of variation in terms of the size pistol that you can fit in this holster, and also the way you configure the thumb snap. And by the way, the shoulder holster is the only one of the 4 concealment holsters that has a retention device. In this case it is a thumb snap, and I have it on the outside of the shoulder holster, and you can see it slightly wraps around the back of the Hellcat, and I positioned it that way because it makes a very natural place for my thumb to unlatch the thumb snap as I'm grasping the pistol and then presenting it from the holster. So I wanted to show this without my coat on so you could see exactly what I was doing. And you'll see in the video I'm reaching up here with my shooting hand, drawing, and I'll back up here now. And as the pistol comes from the holster, it's going to turn toward the target. And as I'm doing this, I'm careful to not pass my non-shooting hand in front of the muzzle, but it's coming out of the shoulder holster, turning, my hands are coming together, I'll come up on the target and then fire a shot. And when I did this for the video, and in fact I'll probably insert the video clips right about here so you can see what this looked like. The times for the shoulder holster for all three of those shots were 2.12 seconds for the first shot, 2.09 seconds for the second shot, and 1.97 seconds for the third shot. And although, as you'll see at the end, the shoulder holster ended up being the slowest of all four of the different carry methods in terms of how long it took from the signal to fire until I actually got that shot off, the difference was not nearly as much as you might expect. In fact, I was kind of surprised at how quickly I was able to get those shots off from under my coat with the shoulder holster and put shots on target. Now, another thing you might have noticed about my presentation from the shoulder holster is that with my non-shooting hand, I was pulling back on my jacket to get it out of the way in order to be able to access that holster more easily. I'm not trying to just reach underneath there and feel around and get my hand wrapped up on the inside of the lining of the coat or anything else. I'm actually removing that, coming out, and presenting my pistol. So that's another consideration if you're using a shoulder holster, and you'll notice this with some of the other presentations as well. You need to get that cover garment out of the way so that you can access your firearm, get it out, and get it up on target. And I just wanted to make sure I pointed it out, particularly with the shoulder holster, because it is a very gross movement to get that jacket out of the way and be able to draw from the holster and then get up on target. Next up is my strong side outside the waistband holster. And the one that I'm using is nothing special. This is kind of a generic holster, but I chose it because it represents the genre and it also fits the Hellcat. And I like this because it is a very natural draw for me. This is one of the more common places that I carry a handgun when I carry one concealed and when I carry it in plain sight as far as that goes. So I was expecting this to be a pretty natural draw and a fairly fast draw. And you'll notice when you watch the presentation, and I'll inset those videos right now. And for my three presentations from the strong side outside the waistband holster, the times were 1.84 seconds, 1.93 seconds, and 1.71 seconds. And that was a little slower than I was expecting. I thought that this was probably going to be about the fastest draw that I was going to get because this is the way that I most normally carry a concealed handgun. So this is a very natural drawing motion for me. But even so, I think potentially sweeping the cover garment out of the way as I was moving toward the handgun caused it to be a little bit slower. And that's another thing that I wanted to point out, because whenever you're drawing from cover, once again, you have to be mindful of your cover garment. So as I was drawing, I was using the blade edge of my hand to sweep my jacket back out of the way, grasp the hand grip, bring the pistol up. Again, my hands came together and I was firing my shot with a two-handed hold. So the outside the waistband holster was definitely faster than the shoulder holster, but again, it wasn't really quite as fast as I thought it was going to be. And again, we see the shoulder holster wasn't all that slow, even compared to what I think would be my most natural draw, or at least the one that I use most commonly when I carry a handgun concealed. So on we go to the cross draw holster. And this time I'm using my DeSantis Crisscross, and I really like this holster for my Hellcat. I have mentioned this in past videos, and in this video, it was really surprising how quickly I was able to draw and get my shots off with the cross draw holster. In fact, these were the fastest shots that I fired, and I'll inset the video so you can see what they looked like, and we'll look at the times. And for those shots from the crisscross holster, I had times of 1.58 seconds, 1.39 seconds, and 1.45 seconds. So again, that was very quick coming out of the cross draw holster. That was the fastest of all 4 of my concealment methods that I was presenting from. And when I was doing that presentation from the crisscross holster, I was again moving my cover garment out of the way. And I think part of the reason this was so fast is because my hand was moving a fairly short distance before it had to access the pistol. And by the time my hand got there, the cover garment was already out of the way, and it just made for a very quick draw, and I was able to get up with that 2-hand hold and get a shot on target very quickly. So I was kind of impressed by that. Not only is this a very comfortable way to carry a pistol, especially if you're seated, and if you have to draw from a seated position, this and the shoulder holster are both much easier to draw from than if you have either the appendix inside the waistband, or depending on what you're sitting in, sometimes even the strong side outside the waistband holster can be difficult to draw when you're in a seated position. But it's very convenient with either the cross draw or the shoulder holster. And the shoulder holster really is nothing more than a cross draw holster that's suspended up here under your arm rather than down here on your belt. So they do have some similarities. But again, very quick presentation from the cross draw holster. Now let's move on and take a look at the appendix inside the waistband. So for the IAWB, I wasn't really sure what to expect. Now in general, I don't care for inside the waistband holsters of any sort, and I generally don't use them. And I really have never used the appendix inside the waistband, so this was going to be something new, but I know this is a very popular form of carry presently, so I wanted to be sure to include it in this video. And there are a couple of things that I want to point out before I get to the actual video of the shots that I was firing as I presented the pistol. One of them is I have been carrying a firearm for almost 4 decades now, virtually every day for almost 4 decades. And this is a way of carrying a firearm that has made me feel more uncomfortable than virtually any other way that I carry a firearm. And I'm not talking about discomfort because the pistol is jabbing me or anything like that. I mean, it makes me feel very uneasy. And as I was putting the pistol into this position, I was being extremely careful because it just, the idea that I'm pointing the muzzle of the loaded pistol toward an area where I really don't want to be shot. And I don't want to be shot anywhere, but I especially don't want to be shot where that pistol barrel is pointed. And I was thinking about that. I was conscious of it as I was making my presentations. And again, I felt very, very uneasy as I was using this particular type of carry method. Now, some of you out there are going to tell me in the comments you carry like this all the time, that it's fantastic, that you like it. That's great if it works for you. But I think other than this video, I'm probably never going to carry a handgun in this manner again. And I double checked my pistol just before I started to film this segment to make sure, again, that it is not loaded currently. Now, my presentation from the AIWB was not as fast as I thought it was going to be. I thought it would probably be as fast as the cross draw because, again, my hand is moving a very short distance. And I'll look at the times quick as I inset the video here. And those times for the appendix inside the waistband were 1.78 seconds, 1.86 seconds, and 1.76 seconds. So again, not quite as fast as the cross draw. And I think the reason for that is as I was raising my sweater, and this would be the exact same dynamic. I know some of you wear just a long untucked shirt or a t-shirt or whatever when you're carrying in this manner. But I think I actually had to wait just an instant to get my cover garment out of the way before I could access my pistol, bring it up and get into that 2-hand grip and fire my shot. And it ended up being just a little bit slower than the cross draw holster. So when we look at just speed, the cross draw was the fastest, the AIWB was number 2, the outside the waistband strong side holster was number 3, and the shoulder holster was number 4. So they lined up that way, but let's take a closer look at these average times and see if they tell us anything. So when I average the time for each of my 3 presentations from the 4 different carry methods, we see the shoulder holster has an average time of 2.06 seconds per presentation. The cross draw holster has an average time of 1.47 seconds. The strong side outside the waistband has a presentation average time of 1.83 seconds, and the appendix inside the waistband has an average time for presentations of 1.8 seconds. So there are a few things that strike me when we look at these averages. First is there's very little difference between all 4 of them. As different as each of these methods are, and as different as the presentations are, the difference from the shoulder holster to the cross draw is only a little over half a second from the fastest to the slowest. So I don't know how often a half a second is going to make that much difference in a presentation, but there's really, again, just not that much difference. The outside the waistband and the appendix inside the waistband are virtually a dead heat. And if I repeated these same presentations again, they could probably end up in reverse order, but it was 1.83 seconds for the outside the waistband and 1.8 seconds for the appendix inside the waistband. And the difference between those 2 and the cross draw being the fastest is right around 1/3 of a second. So when we get into these discussions and you start looking at what's going to be the best type of carry method and what's going to give you the fastest presentation and all that, I really think your training is going to make a bigger difference. And when we look at some of these other factors, like how you're going to move your cover garment in order to be able to access your firearm from whatever that carry method may be, and whether it's going to be accessible in other positions like sitting or kneeling or what have you, I think those considerations really are going to be something you should consider more than that carry method. And one last thing before I call it quits, folks, and that is just an announcement. This is probably going to be my next to the last video in 2021. I mentioned in a live stream recently, I'm going to take off basically the rest of December and spend time with my family, so I'm not going to be recording videos. Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. I haven't been kicked off YouTube yet or anything like that. So I'll be back. I am going to do one more video that's probably going to go live between Christmas and New Year's, and that's my year-end wrap-up video where I pick my favorite new firearm that's joined my collection over the course of the last 12 months. But other than that, you're probably not going to see another video. If I get some time, maybe I'll fire up the computer and do a live stream somewhere in the latter part of December, but I'm just not going to be uploading new videos until after the first of the year, other than that year-end wrap-up video that I just mentioned. And that's the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, if you purchase anything from Optics Planet, be sure to use my discount code, which is... And if you use that discount code, it's good for 5% off anything you purchase from Optics Planet. Also remember, warbirdbunker.com is making t-shirts for the channel. If you go to warbirdbunker.com, you can find my t-shirt there, and there are some new t-shirts and stickers that are up on warbirdbunker.com for the holidays. So be sure to check those out, and if you use my discount code there, which is HRFUNK for you, that'll save you 10% on anything you purchase from warbirdbunker.com. So see you next time, folks. And until then, have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and I'll see you in 2022.